Hello and welcome to the Last Edit podcast, a weekly film podcast with myself, Citizen Sleeve, and my amazing friend
Silver Hawkins.
Now, for those of you uninitiated in our weekly film warblings, each week one of us chooses a different film, and then we discuss that film in a bit of depth, and break it down as we see fit in the important talking points that we wanna discuss. I should also say at the start of the video that we now have a couple of our podcasts on Anchor, Spotify, iTunes. If you just want to listen, and I'll be racking them up every 2 or 3 days until we kind of meet where we are with the YouTube podcasts, and then we'll all marry them up and be going out all the time. And we've also got some new content coming. We've got a few different discussions coming up about various film franchises and also particular things within the film industry, which I think will be really interesting for you guys to listen to.
We hope so anyway.
Yeah, we certainly hope so. Okay, so this week was my choice, and I decided to go with a film that I probably haven't seen for at least 15 years. But when it came out in 1999, I was really into the Wu-Tang Clan. I really was into rap music. I was at that kind of age, and all my friends loved this film. And you know when you get into that little a mini obsession with the film for just a little period of time. We used to watch it quite a bit over the course of say 6 months or something, and then I didn't really see it again for a long time. And that film is Jim Jarmusch's Ghost Dog Way of the Samurai. Now, Jim Jarmusch is a very unusual filmmaker. He's very experimental. He's made things like Dead Man in 2005 with Johnny Depp, Last Lovers Left Alive, which is a really weird kind of vampire film. He makes some very odd films, and this is another one. So Ghost Dog is
and they don't really kind of fit into a genre very neatly. They're not like genre films.
No. He's definitely not a studio filmmaker. He's definitely not a genre filmmaker. He's very much a unique filmmaker who'll go and do his own thing, and some of it will work and some of it doesn't often, which we'll definitely talk about with Ghost Dog. So I have fond memories of this, but after rewatching it, it wasn't quite the fondest of memories that I had when I had first watched it long ago. So let's quickly go over the story. So Ghost Dog is played by Forest Whitaker, who is excellent as pretty much always. He basically is saved by an Italian gangster when he's a kid, he's about to get shot by these other kids.
They were beaten up.
He's beaten to a pulp, basically. And is almost shot. And this gangster called Louie comes to his aid and rescues him. And from that moment forth, after a while, he contacts Louie again, as we found out later, and he becomes his retainer, or his assassin, his hitman. And he's very good at this. Very, very good indeed. He's a very quiet, a guy who likes a lot of solitude. He lives at the top of a building in a loft with his pigeons and studies the way of the samurai. And this is the code that he lives by, the Bushido. And
from a book called the Hagakure.
And we sometimes throughout the film get periods where he will read from parts of the book to reinforce that particular narrative element that they're going through at the time. So we'll talk about specifics later on. There's lots to talk about, lots of cool stuff, and lots of stuff that really got my nerves this time round, that was so clear and obvious and repetitive that we'll get to it. So, had you ever seen this before? I know you thought you may have done, and what did you think of it overall?
No, I hadn't actually seen it before. Okay. Yeah, I was pretty mixed on it. Like, the pacing is really slow. Like, it takes like an hour basically or more for like the first like action sequence to kind of kick in.
Yeah.
Most of the movie is really just like build up, and that's not necessarily a bad thing. But the movie is just sort of this ponderous and slow.
It feels long for its 2-hour duration, I think.
Yeah, and it's just it is really odd. Ghost Dog is a really, really odd character, like clearly like mentally insane, and like the way he sort of abides by this code that he's kind of built for himself through the Hagakure, with a sort of just stoic fanaticism that borders on being insane, and the way he sort of justifies his murders through that mechanism is a little disturbing. It's really odd. I found it struggled with tones at times. Like there's, like we talked about on Discord, like there's a common theme throughout the entire mob, probably from their boss Don Vargo, that where they're all basically obsessed with old cartoons, especially old Max Fleischer cartoons like Felix the Cat, Betty Boop, like cartoons like that, Woody Woodpecker, and that they just like obsessively watch, and like Don Vargo watches them like a meter from the television, from like this analog television set, like his head just glued to the screen, just watching it obsessively. It's really weird, which I've already said. And yeah, and just even like when the action sequences do sort of erupt, they're also a little odd, because like all the gangsters are basically just these old wise guys, basically, that have just been sitting around drinking all day. They're all like overweight. They're all like,
on the cusp of becoming decrepit. On
the other side of 50 at least. Which also lends the movie a bit of a humorous tone, especially because like the underboss, I forget his name, Don Vargo's underboss, is a big fan of Flavor Flav, or Flavor Flav, the rapper, the rapper, and can basically recite his lyrics by heart, which is a bit funny as well. This disconnect between like, I mean, I think one of the themes of the film is sort of this meeting of different cultures and codes, where with the underboss you have like the Italian mobster meeting like the gangster ethos and gangster culture, right? And where he's sort of drawn to that, where Ghost Dog is drawn to the Japanese code. It's really like eclectic, varying experience watching it.
Well, I think before we go any further, let's do a little narrative. I totally agree. Let's do a little narrative prefix, and that's just that the reason all this is set up is that Ghost Dog is asked by Louie, who gets his jobs by carrier pigeon, because why not? It's the most efficient way. Carrier pigeon and notes, which I actually quite like. It's quite different. But he gets a note telling him his next target. His next target is one of the old Italian gangsters, handsome somebody. He gets killed by Ghost Dog, but he realizes that Mr. Vargo, the head of the family's daughter, he doesn't know that yet, is in the hotel room. And then from that moment forth, the Italians, the old, aging, decrepit Italian gangsters who are barely holding on to the remnants of what the Italian gangster visage was. There's no new youngsters or newcomers coming through. It's all the old guard, and by old guard, we mean old guard.
Yeah, it's basically close to a retirement home.
Yeah. And so Louie is called into this really weird meeting with the three heads of the family, as it were. Vargo, I think it's Salvia, I might be wrong, who's the underboss, and then the older guy who just shouts, what's it? Carrier pigeons! Carrier pigeons! That guy's odd. But they have this really weird meeting where Louie's told he has to get rid of Ghost Dog because it's what the family wants, because one of their own has been killed and the daughter is seen. And
yeah, I mean, we should probably start out before that to explain the context of that. Is, you know, like you said, Ghost Dog comes up, is Louie's basically his hitman, and so Louie gets contracted for a hit by the mob. Because one of their guys, Handsome, I forget his name, like Handsome something.
I want to say Jack, but that's because of Borderlands.
Is his nickname? He's basically shacked up with and is sleeping with Don Vargo's daughter. And that's an infraction that gets you clipped.
Yeah.
And so they contract the hit out to Louie, who then contracts it to Ghost Dog. And Ghost Dog then carries out the hit, but Don Vargo's daughter is there as he carries out the hit. And
she's supposed to be on the bus, they keep saying, but she goes to his flat instead.
Yeah. Well, wait, whose flat?
Daughter.
Don Vargo's flat?
Handsome's, yeah. Handsome's. So she's supposed to go on the bus, and she doesn't, and then she ends up there. And that's where all the trouble begins, as it were. But the meeting's so odd. It's so odd. Like, first of all, they go back and forward with this weird questioning, And again, I think it's Salvatore.
Yeah,
or
because
something.
they decide like, oh, we took out one of our own, so, like handsome whatever his name was, who's jacked up with the daughter, is a made guy, which is a big thing in the mob,
Yeah.
obviously. And so we can't just like take his murder lightly. We have to do something to the guy who clipped him, who is Ghost Dog. So they basically tell Louie, you're gonna have to give us Ghost Dog, or we're gonna clip you too. And so Louis basically gives them all the stuff he has in Ghost Dog, which isn't a whole lot.
Well, and he even says to him, this is going to be really dangerous, guy. This guy's taken 12 hits for me. He is incredibly difficult to find, and he is a professional. And so they ask him all these questions, and the underboss keeps saying, okay, let's move on from pigeons. Okay, let's move on from whatever random thing you're talking about now. And they get to the name.
Yeah, by pigeons we mean carrier pigeons.
Carrier
or
pigeons,
what
yeah.
he keeps on top of his roof.
it's
Like a lot of people in New York.
Yeah, it's passenger pigeons, the old guy keeps shouting. Passenger pigeons! Gone since 1914! I just want to film just with him, but maybe I don't want to film with just... Anyway, so they start talking about names.
And it seems like he has emphysema or something to that effect.
Yeah. And he starts talking about that his name is Ghost Dog, Louie, and then they start... Or the guy who said raps like Flavor Flav starts talking about rapper names, and then Vargo oddly goes, I don't know about rappers, but I know about Indians. And starts talking about, Indian.
Yeah, because Indians have names like Ghost Dog and Running Dog and
yeah, exactly. And then
Red Cloud and stuff.
Yeah, and then it flips back around, and he calls out two of his gangsters and say, "Hey, Big Angie and blah blah blah, Snaky Joe or something. You go and do this," without even understanding the fact that it just completely. Just why? Why have you just talked about these two things and then your own gangster heritage is exactly the bloody same as what you're talking about?
The thing with wise guy names, yeah.
Yeah,
I love the fact that like one of the wise guys who sort of orbited Trump for decades was called Joey No Socks.
Joey No Socks. He's brilliant.
Yeah.
Brilliant. It just doesn't wear socks. He doesn't believe in them. It's not important in life. It's brilliant. But yeah, this film is, at times, it's beautifully shot. It's like the first time that we see Ghost Dog actually practicing with the swords and the hand-to-hand combat, there's a little bit too much motion blur for me, but that's an individual complaint that I have with certain types in films. I think it's overused a little bit. But the shots of the pigeons over the city and the shots of him doing the combat is really nicely staged.
That training scene sort of ended up being a little disappointing for me.
Because you never see him use his sword.
Yeah, it seemed to build up to something that just is never delivered on.
Totally agree with that, and it's weird, isn't it? Because you see this really cool training sequence where he's using the short machete-like sword, and then the full samurai sword, and really,
I don't even think it's a full like samurai sword. It's a smaller version. I think like a wukasashi.
three-quarter.
Yeah,
and the only thing we ever really see translated from that is the way he puts his pistol away by going like he would with his sword. That's it. Yeah, that's the only. It does look amazing though, and as he moves.
I mean, the way, like to speak to what you said about Forest Whitaker's performance, when we started talking about the film, the way he handles firearms in the film is, I mean, he makes it look easy and sells the fact that Ghost Dog is remarkably competent at handling firearms.
Yeah, absolutely, and he has a certain.
I mean,
in the way
I have to say though, of course, I'm just a layman. I do not know how to handle firearms, but he sells the illusion of it to me.
I definitely don't either. So yeah, I cannot attest to whether or not that is truly accurate firearmage. But hey, the way he moves through the city, I really enjoy as well. I like a lot of the tracks that are played. Although again, I think as with the cartoons, as with the pigeon imagery, those three particular elements are overused too much, and that's why part of the film ends up dragging. The pigeon is clearly a metaphor for freedom to some extent, but the code he's working by, the training he's done, the red flag.
I think it's a pretty clear metaphor for the old way, which is his code, right? I mean, the carrier pigeon is the old way of conveying information.
Information, yeah.
Just like
and the way he controls them with the red flag.
Just like his samurai code is the old way of living, or however you want to phrase it. I think that's sort of what the common thread there is. The old way of doing things.
you got the cartoons as a metaphor for unreal violence and the way these guys just stare expressionless, including the daughter, just at these cartoons, and then you've got the music that plays every time he sits in a car. He does the same thing. He uses a piece of tech where he gets in the car and he puts on a CD and it kind of suits the mood. But again, each of these things, each of these sequential structures are used too much within the film, I think. And I think if you pull back some of that, it gives a bit more wiggle room for the characters. It's a bit too structured, almost.
I mean, one thing I did find odd as he moves through the world is, like, just the amount, like, they make him sound like an outcast, basically, when, he sits in the park and meets a little girl.
Traylene, I think her name is, something like that.
Yeah, I don't remember. I don't remember her name at all.
She's not in the cast list.
It's barely even mentioned, I think.
Twice, I think, something like that, yeah.
I think, from her mother. Like when her mother calls
when she
for her.
shouts.
Yeah. But it's not really important.
No.
But yeah, he meets her and she tells him, her mother basically says that he's a loner, that he never talks to anyone, never meets anyone, and so forth. And yet when you see him walking through the streets, he gets greeted with a significant amount of respect by all the other, like, gangbangers who are hanging around on the streets. Like, hey, Ghost Dog, what up, Ghost Dog? Like,
enough respect stuff.
Yeah, like, they all know him.
Yeah.
And they all, like, show him respect. Which I found a bit sort of incongruent with that whole outcast theme that gets cast on him.
Like when he sat with I'm not going to murder her name, but I think it's Traylene or something like that. Before she sits down on the bench next to him, there's that group of rappers who are outside with the radio, and they're rapping, and then they get up, all walk past him, and it's just like ultimate respect to Ghost Dog. All he has to do is nod, and that respect is kind of bled across the underbelly of the city. Everybody knows who he is. So yeah, you're right. This notion of an outcast is a bit weird.
Yeah.
He's almost his own outcast in terms of not wanting to interact, although he does with Raymond, who... well, I guess we'll talk about the lead up first. So the little girl sits down next to the bench next to him, and they start talking because there's a dog who's come up, a pit bull, who's just staring at him.
Yeah.
And he's staring back silently. And neither of them... Again, it's like that weird respect thing is bled over into this animal as well. And she says, if you don't want him to be there, just tell him to go away. And he just goes, go away. And the dog goes. It's like, hey, this guy got command over animals as well. It's like, yeah, very weird. And we only ever see that dog once again. I think that's a thread that was... Yeah, I think that's a thread that there's a few threads.
I mean, I thought that was a pretty obvious call out to his name, Ghost Dog.
Ghost Dog, yeah, exactly. The dog who appears, now and again.
Yeah.
And so she sits down. They start talking about books. She's got books in her lunchbox, and she shows him like Frankenstein. And there's a nurse's book that she likes the cover of, and she's been reading a book about Black history. And then
the nurse's book is basically like a Harlequin romance.
Yeah, and she just likes the boldness of the cover and the comfort of it. And he reads a bit of Frankenstein and tells her these books are really cool, and then gives her a book to read called Rashomon, which is a book that he was given by Vaya's daughter when he first met her and he killed Handsome Blore.
Yeah.
So it's got, and that is another. It's a nice little narrative string that I like that continues throughout the film. That particular book, Rashomon. And they hit it off a little bit, and then they goes for ice cream. She meets Raymond, and then you get this really cool, I think, weird relationship. I think this is probably the strongest part of the film.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah. Like that relationship between the Haitian and Raymond and Ghost Dog.
And Raymond only speaks French. Ghost Dog only speaks English, American. Ghost Dog doesn't speak Japanese either, even though he's following the Harikura, the way of the Bushido. And so you get these really funny moments when both of them are pretty much saying almost exactly the same thing, just in different languages, and they're totally agreeing each other. And I think there's some semblance that they kind of know, but not really. There's that amazing bit where he owns an ice cream truck, we should say, Raymond, so he's often giving them ice cream throughout the film and stuff. And there's this really cool bit where Raymond wants Ghost Dog to see something, and he takes him up to a rooftop. And there's this guy on this high-rise who's just building a boat.
Yeah.
And it's kind of like 3/4 complete. And there's no sensible reason for you to have a boat on. You'll never be able to get it into the ocean. But this guy is just doing it because he wants to have his own boat and this place to go, which is separate. I really like that and the way they kind of they laugh about it, and then they say almost exactly the same thing. How's he ever going to get it down? But that moment I really, really loved.
Yeah, that was a good moment. Like, and just yeah, the like the portrayal of communication across even like language barriers is really compelling and interesting, and the growth of the relationship there. Yeah, I agree. I agree with you. That's by far the most interesting and strongest aspect of the film is their relationship.
Well, it's as you said, it's this meeting of cultures. We've got this really aging Italian mob who, I mean, when they're going after Ghost Dog, they're basically told to kill any black guy who looks big and could be Ghost Dog. So they're wandering around in twos. They're climbing upstairs like they're about to have a stroke or something.
Yeah.
Getting to the top and go, and then bursting through doors. And then one of the ones they come across is it a Native American?
Yeah.
I think. And he's got pigeons. And they burst through the door with a shotgun and the weapons. And they talk about
because they're going to all
him.
the pigeon coops, yeah.
All the pigeon coops, and they talk about shooting him and decide not to, and then they shoot one of his pigeons, and he's just like, stupid white men. What have you done? Stupid white men. And that's, again, little pockets of culture that are in opposition and also sometimes in tandem. Which is, you know, and then there's that poor guy he just happens to be a black guy on a rooftop, and those two guys just are on the other rooftop and just shoot him dead. He just goes, hey man, what are you? And that's it, he's gone. It's like, but it really shows the archaic nature of not only what the mobsters are doing in terms of who they are now, but also Ghost Dog's philosophy. All these aging philosophies that are slowly being lost to the world because they don't.
Yeah, to the modern world. Yeah.
Yeah, they don't function anymore. They don't exist within the same paradigms they used to, and it's interesting to see these ways of life kind of conflux together and then destroy each other to some extent.
Yeah, I agree. I mean that does seem to be like the overall theme of the film is the old ways versus the new.
Yeah, versus the new god. Okay, well, I mean, I think we should start heading kind of towards the end. There's as we said, there's some really nice moments with Raymond. There is that nice little section with the little girl. There's some beautiful shots of the city that sweep over it. With I should mention before we get to the end actually, RZA. So I'm a huge Wu-Tang fan. RZA is the originator of the Wu-Tang Clan, and he basically does all the music for this film, in combination with the Wu-Tang Clan as well. So I think there's some really nice tracks. Although there's the main theme that is repeated a bit too much again. I think that's part of the problem with this film. There are 4 or 5 things that are just repeated a bit too much, that are way too overt and kind of knock you over the head a bit too many times. You don't really need that.
Right.
I think if you'd lessen that, the film would have had a bit more room to breathe, I think. But still, it's still quite a nice film to look at. It's got some quite nice moments. Forest Whitaker plays the character reasonably well.
And it does have a pretty creative kill towards the end.
Yes, I think I know which one you mean. Well, yeah, Flavor Flav. We'll get to that. So, It really all kind of starts properly in your face. This is about to then go really south. Is when Ghost Dog gets the message from Louie. Louie's outside and he's waiting, and a pigeon appears first, and then Ghost Dog just appears. Sorry, in that valley.
Well, he's noticed that the mob is out looking for him now.
Yeah.
I mean, he does first get the even before Louis gets like called in in order to hand him over. Louis does send him a note that things are rotten in Denmark, as it were.
Yeah, and then he goes there to confirm it, and they have a little chat, and then Marini turns up, who's the underboss's brother-in-law. Ridiculous! I can remember the brother-in-law of the underboss, but not the underboss's name. Christ.
Yeah.
But he turns up, clearly with intent to kill Louis, and Ghost Dog is not going to allow that. He's his retainer. He will die before Louis does. And he kills him, and then he shoots. Louis says, you might as well kill me then. He shoots him in the shoulder, so it looks like Ghost Dog has attacked them both, so he's got some kind of excuse. And then he goes back to the... It's really weird, isn't it, when he goes back to the gangster's hideout, because it's like when you watch like Donnie Brasco, or you watch Goodfellas, or you watch the way the gangster hideouts usually are, you can tell this is them in decline because the room is smaller. They owe rent to that guy who comes to the door. He owes 3 months rent.
Yeah.
They're all sitting down avoiding the underboss's gaze because they're not providing, and none of them are, and they're all out of sorts, and they can't do what they used to do anymore. I really like part of the way they show the gangsters in decline, but also these weird comedy moments kind of
It comes
out
off
of
as
that context.
comes off frequently more as hokey than
It does.
than
It
anything.
does. Yeah, a bit less grounded at times, which is
Yeah.
a shame. So then we basically head to the final part of the film, where all the gangsters move to the Vargas family.
Well, not all
castle
of them, but a
retreat.
significant part of them.
A significant portion of them.
Because to move Don Vargo there, basically.
Yeah.
So, to protect him to like a castle, his villa, a mansion outside of the city.
And by this point, they found the coop at the loft that Ghost Dog has. All his pigeons have been murdered. He finds them. Obviously, he's quietly devastated, and he finds a key and he opens this floor in this wheeled puzzle thing. Very simple, but then pulls out his secondary case with his other weapons in. And we end up with him going to this retreat to find Vargas, to wipe out the family if he can. And there's a really nice little touching moment where he's got his sniper rifle, and he's aiming at the family and checking out distance and range as they come in. And then Vargas's car pulls up with the daughter in it. She gets out from the front side, he gets out from the back, and he's trying to... But he's noticed a woodpecker prior to that. And just as he's aiming and getting ready to take the shot, this woodpecker lands and flies on the end of his weapon. I like that that sense of nature, the way nature seems to embrace him, but maybe the world doesn't or hasn't, and I like that. But again, it's a way for him to have to go in hard with Plan B, as he calls it, and just shoots everyone in the head.
Yeah, see that I didn't quite get the point of that bird, because it seemed to be like a sign from, oh, you shouldn't kill him, or because it does interfere directly with his shot and prevent his shot. So it seems like it's a sign from somewhere that, oh, you shouldn't kill him, but no, it isn't. He just it's just a momentary distraction.
I just think that's Jarmusch being superfluous Jarmusch. He just liked the idea of that happening
possibly.
at the time. I don't think it really had much intent to anything meaning-wise.
Yeah, I mean that's very possible. I mean, it certainly comes off that way.
Yeah, definitely. I'd like you to talk about the fight scene first, because you were the one who hadn't seen it before and was like, eh. So what did you think about that whole sequence, that whole fight scene?
Yeah, it was just a bit hokey, like the way these old wise guys were sort of falling over. It didn't quite come off as particularly believable. I mean, Forest Whitaker's performance and the way he sort of swings around and shoots and stuff looks really good. But yeah, I don't think the older wise guys really sold it off all that well. In those fight sequences, and it came off ultimately as a bit hokey.
Well, let's
but you were
face it,
kind of chuckling more than, wow, this is really cool.
I think if I'd gone in there, I could have wiped all those gangsters out. Seriously, Vinny's running backwards, gets shot in the back and falls into the toilet. Louie looks startled and gets shot in the shoulder again because he can't kill him. And everybody else is just bumbling about and falling over stuff.
Yeah, except the old guy with emphysema who basically drops dead from a heart attack. When he
has a
sees
heart
Ghost
attack
Dog.
on the spot, yeah. And then Vargas. Now, if I am essentially Scarface, but older, I would be sat in that chair with double-barreled shotguns in both hands, pointed at the door, at least. But he just kind of accepts the fact he's going to die. He's shot a couple of times, and then he falls back into his chair.
Yeah, I mean, he's completely, like, Silva's performance as Don Vargo is completely monosyllabic throughout the entire movie. He doesn't emote at all. He's basically just stone-faced throughout the entire thing.
He's barely engaging, isn't he, really?
Whether he's watching cartoons, whether he's saying, like, moo as the Native American.
Yeah.
Like,
He's
to make fun of Native American names.
But that's it. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a real shame, because I think
it's
all this build
really
up,
weird.
yeah, all this build up, and we end up with a really anticlimactic sequence, really. So after that, he then has to go and find the other gangsters, of which he murders them all in a similar fashion. At the final sequence is a bit weird. Again, he's ended up in the park now. Everybody's gone in that sense from the mobsters except for Louie, and
And Don Vargo's daughter.
And Don Vargo's daughter, and he's been told he has to kill Ghost Dog now for the family. But Ghost Dog has. Well, he wants to go and see the girl and Raymond first, and he wants to give Raymond some money. He wants to give Raymond a suit that he stole, which is another odd sequence before he goes off to the retreat.
Yeah.
And he gives him all this money, gives him the weapons. He pops the clip from his normal 9mm pistol. He puts it in the case and leaves it for him, and then he just slowly says goodbye and walks towards Louie. He's now appeared on the street and walks towards him. And first of all, he kind of pretends like he's going to shoot with this weapon with no pistol. He intends to die because he's not going to kill Louie, who is his retainer. So he must obey the Hagakure and the way of the Bushido till the very end. And yeah, he moves forward slowly. Then he throws the weapon away, and Louie shoots him again. And finally, he falls to the ground, and he just asks Louie for one last favor, which is that he takes Rashomon and he reads it when he's got time. Oh, I should say he gives prior to that, he also gives the Hagakure to the little girl to read.
Yeah. I mean,
she gives him Rashomon back.
Yeah. The one he met at the park, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And then there's this little bit where Louie is walking away, Ghost Dog's died now, Raymond's screaming, and the little girl picks up the silenced pistol, aims it at him. He stumbles, she pretends or shoots, but there's no clip. And then you get the sense that there might be this continuation with this little girl who also starts following the way, which we end on. But Louis gets away with Vargas's daughter, and off they go. And then the final.
It was interesting because as the end credits rolled, there was something that occurred to me with the scene with Louis getting back into the car with Vargo's daughter, because she seems to like completely change in that moment when he comes back and she puts on the sunglasses and conceivably she's now basically the boss of the family. Yeah. That maybe she's actually the one who sort of engineered the whole thing. Yeah. Like she involved herself with that handsome whatever or whoever wise guy because she knew what would come of it, that he would get clipped and that this would like bring in inner turmoil to the family and would basically create the void that would allow her to climb to the top. The only way that she could climb to the top as basically a woman would be to
clear out the old god.
Yeah,
exactly.
Precisely.
Clear out the old patriarchy, clear out the old mobster old god, and then reset everything.
Yeah.
Good point.
And that's not like talked about or mentioned at all.
No.
That's
And
just that's really just sort of carried by the way she puts on sunglasses in that final sequence.
With more of an authority.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then we finish basically on the little girl who's sat in a kitchen, reading, oblivious to everything going around her, including her mother asking her to go into a different room and these things, and just reading a passage again in her mind, but out loud for us, from the Hagakure. And I don't know, I quite like the way it ends, but the implication that she's going to kind of carry on the way of the Bushido and become a contract killer is like. And that's why I mentioned last week, it's definitely not like Leon, but it's got elements of Leon in it. But they seem to be sparser, as it were.
Yeah.
They're not anywhere near as fleshed out as those particular elements are in Leon. So what are your overall kind of finishing thoughts then?
Yeah, like I said, that they're mixed. I mean, it's curious to sort of compare this movie, I think, to Day of the Jackal, which is the other assassin movie that we've kind of talked about, right? And maybe like compare the characters of the Jackal, who is basically a contract killer devoid of any morality or code or anything beyond what is his contract and accomplishing the contract, right? Whereas Ghost Dog is a contract killer with a very specific hardline code that he sticks to no matter the consequences, like fanatically devoted to it. And I have to say that I actually find like Ghost Dog's assassin to be more disturbing in his like fanatical devotion to that code than I do like Edward Fox's cavalier sort of like amorality.
Well, yeah, his code kills him. I mean, by
Yeah.
sticking to that code, he could have very easily killed
Well,
Louie.
not just that, but because of the righteousness with which he kills, right?
The righteous indignation he thinks by which this code allows him to live.
Yeah, and to live and to take lives from others with complete impunity. Like, who knows who the 12 people he killed for Louis are, right?
Yeah. I guess the only way to think that
Could
it's
be a
always
witness who walked down the wrong alley
Yeah.
one night and saw something that the person shouldn't have seen.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, he's clearly got a line because he won't kill Boggs' daughter, but we don't know morally where that line. We know his code has morality, but we don't know where his morality rests within that context,
Yeah.
within that code. So that's where the grey area exists, I think. So I thought it was a weird rewatch. Like I said, when it first came out, I was quite enamoured by it. But we're talking in my we're talking 1999, so just at the end of uni, like plonk in the middle of uni. I was only 19, 20. So
And like we touched on like on the last podcast, I think when you mentioned you were choosing this film, there were like in around 2000 up into like the early 2000s, there was kind of a bunch of hip hop martial arts kind of movies.
yeah, Cradle
sort
to
of
the
came out.
Grave.
Yeah,
Romeo Must
Romeo
Die.
Must Die. Yeah.
Yeah, a few other of that ilk. This one's just a bit more separate from it, I think.
Yeah,
because
because it's really not a martial arts movie.
no, it's
it
not
kinda-
a straight up action film either.
It kind of markets itself that way, especially with like the katana and like the way of the samurai and sort of in the way it markets itself. But it really isn't.
No, not at all. The pace belays that totally. There's it's not an action film. It's not a martial arts film. It's more a study of the death of culture in the face of the new than it is anything else. And it kind of does that okay.
Yeah,
It's still not amazing.
I mean certainly in an interesting way. The movie is interesting.
Yeah.
If nothing else.
I'd certainly say if this looks like it might be your thing, I would recommend you give it a chance once. I mean, I don't think I'll be going back to it for a very, very, very long time because again,
No, I
as you
won't
said,
either.
I found a lot of the fight scenes hokey. I found the repetition of those 4 or 5 visual motifs really annoying after a while and just so overplayed that detracted from what I thought was on occasion quite a well shot, quite a well structured and quite a well musically scored film.
Yeah, and I mean even and with the patience I have, but even I found that like the pacing of the film to be ponderous at times.
That, as you said, the first open an hour.
Yeah.
Really terribly slow, and that's coming from someone who's we just watched 3, 4, 5 hour bloody films. So.
Yeah.
Okay, right, Ghost Dog then. So if you like this kind of stuff, give it a try. I'd still kind of like it, but it's lessened over time, and after 15 years, 20 years, I don't think it holds up as much as it did when I first watched it, certainly. Okay, so next week, it's your choice. What shall we be watching?
We shall be watching an HBO television film. So for the first time, not a film that premiered in cinemas or theaters, but was made for television. It is a film based on a book, a memoir by Colonel James Burton of the U.S. Air Force called The Pentagon Wars. And it is basically one of the greatest films ever made about sort of the ineptitude and massive corruption of bureaucracy on a Kafkaesque scale. The specific bureaucracy in question being that of the Pentagon and the acquisitions or R&D department, and just the massive billions of dollars that sort of disappear into this money sinkhole of research and development for new weapons for the American Defense Department.
Okay, well, I've never seen this. Obviously, you sent me that one scene, which I really thought was cool. I think probably because this, I assume, was US television only. Maybe
It's HBO, yeah.
Oh,
It's an HBO movie.
HBO.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Okay, that'll be interesting.
With it stars Carrie Elson and Kelsey Grammer as the two main leads.
Yeah, well, that's pretty good already, I would say.
Yeah, they're both quite good.
Okay, well, excellent. I can't wait for that. We've got lots more stuff coming up. Talk to us in the comments, or if you're listening on Spotify or Anchor, we hope you enjoy these episodes. And yeah, this has been The Last Edit. Take it easy. We'll see you next week.
Thanks for listening or watching, and take care, guys.